Welcome to E3 Alliance's informational session titled Right Here, Right Now, The Best of Teaching and Learning. I'm Matt Pope, Chief Transformation Officer at E3 Alliance. Our moderators today and helping me out are my teammates Lori Davis and Leticia Maynard. I would also like to give a shout out to some of our other team members, Amy Havard, Jennifer Sines, and Priscilla Flores, for inviting people to today's session. Don't hesitate to engage with us on our social media platforms at E3 Alliance throughout today's session. Today's slides will also be added to the chat a few times and different resources, but we'll also share it in follow-up emails. During our brief time this morning, please add questions to the Q&A feature, and we will try to address them during our time together. E3 Alliance is a nonprofit based in Austin, Texas. Our mission is to transform education systems through data and collaboration so all students succeed. And the all students is important to us because equity drives our work. Before we get started on the content, let's take a quick poll. In a second, a poll will pop up and the question is, what is your current level of concern for teaching and learning in your campus and or district? The options are very high, Wilson, high, I volunteer as tribute, and moderate, just keep swimming. So Letty, pop up the poll for us, please. Thank you for participating in the poll. We have a good mixture of very high and high, but we have quite a bit of moderate. So a lot of people that just want to keep swimming, but I hope each of you can pick up some learning today to continue to move you in the direction of success in your district. Since March 2020, E3 Alliance has not slowed down. We've continued to work hard, hand in hand with district and school partners. Along with those partnerships, we've provided professional learning and coaching. We've shared a plethora of resources, you could say dozens, through our website and social media posts. We've hosted live webinars to share perspectives and learning along the way, and we continue to lead with data. Through all of this, we've gained a unique perspective, and you're here today to learn some insight in what we believe is going well. In fact, many leaders have asked us to help them determine what is working and what is not. Today, I'm going to share with you 4 things that can help you move in the direction of success. These will be leadership moves and teaching practices versus programs or modality types. But first, I'll share with you some things getting in the way of leading, teaching, and learning in our schools. First, there have been challenges with the language we are using. Over the last 9 months, we've had to acquire a whole set of new terms. This has made it challenging for leaders, teachers, and families and communities to try to understand exactly what it is we're doing for our students right now. Also, there has not been enough human interaction. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is how much we need each other. It has spotlighted our humanity. This is especially true for our students, for which most of whom our schools serve as their gateway to the world outside of their homes. But we've noticed that even with schools reopening, the quality and quantity of human connection for our students is still lacking. Perhaps the most challenging of all are the instructional leadership practices that must be adjusted in response to the pandemic realities. Without adjustments to curriculum, we aren't dealing with the crisis we have. Curriculum has remained static during this time. Also, instructional priorities have not been narrowed to allow for the added weight on our teachers. The good news is that the team at E3 has been working hard over the last 9 months, working alongside educators with boots on the virtual ground, and we've observed and supported leadership moves that can meet these challenges head on, supporting students, teachers, and communities through this extraordinary and difficult time. So for each of these, we are going to share with you what is working. First, everyone is at a different place in their journey to become fluent with the vocabulary of our current teaching and learning practices. But to overcome the confusion and the increased anxiety this causes, we must seek clarity of language and use it to support school leaders, teachers, families, and communities in getting on the same page about our efforts. The first terms we've had to learn were synchronous, which is all together or live learning, and asynchronous, which is independent and not live learning or teaching. Both of these can be done in person and virtual. We've provided lots of clarity around these terms. And think about it, they weren't even part of our vocabulary 10 months ago. Now to the part where we lack much clarity. There have been many words used to describe the different modalities and location of learning. The problem is these words are not interchangeable. We are confusing each other and raising anxiety by blurring the lines. And worse, we risk spending money and precious time in the wrong direction if we don't know what internal commitments we are making or what professional learning and support we are procuring. For example, a school leader recently contracted with a company to provide blended learning professional development during their October PD. Blended learning is not part of the district's current framework for teaching and learning. And while blended learning is great, the principal was not clear about this type of instructional approach versus the district framework. Needless to say, this caused much confusion and stress and worked against forward progress. So do not assume people have clarity around these new terms and approaches. Leading with consistent, purposeful language will ensure accurate decision-making and get everyone on the same page. So how do we do that? We first start with understanding what each modality and location means. The first is we're going to talk about the location of people. With the location of people, we have these three categories. In person, where students are physically located in a classroom with teachers and peers. Remote or distance, where students are not in a building or classroom and they are physically separated from teachers and peers. This model can be both synchronous and asynchronous or a mix of both. And then you have hybrid school, which means some students are in person and some students are remote or in distance learning. This can also be synchronous, asynchronous, or a mix of both. So those refer to the location of people. The next one is the location of learning, and that's virtual or online learning. Now, pre-March 2020, we've had virtual or online learning in some capacity. Higher ed institutions had this in more practice than pre-K through 12 school districts. But this refers to experiences on computers using the internet and software programs. It can be part of in-person or remote distance learning. The last section refers to the instructional design and style. This is where we find blended learning, where it's integrated teacher-led and student-driven experiences, where the students learn at least in part through virtual or online platforms. But with blended learning, students must have some control over time, place, path, or pace. Next is teaching with technology, where devices are used to enhance or supplement teacher-led experiences. So technology platforms are used at the augmentation, modification, or redefinition level of SAMR, not substitution, which we're just not substituting paper worksheets for online worksheets. And last is flipped instruction, where whole group new concept learning happens in remote or distant setting or asynchronously in the classroom. In-person or synchronous classroom time is focused on the application of the skills, either in small groups or with individuals. These four are not dependent on the location of people. We're going to add this glossary to the chat and as a follow-up email so you can have this resource to be able to create clarity, because we'll want to create clarity with staff, but it's also powerful to provide this clarification for families and communities you serve. Let's look at a few examples of how some schools have provided this clarity. Central Middle School realized through learning this fall that many terms were misunderstood. The campus leaders planned a learning session for staff to define each term and what they mean, and then communicated what their exact model was. The campus is using a hybrid model, which means the location of people is both in person and virtual, and they are teaching with technology. This learning, communication, and diagram will help them provide as much clarity for staff, students, and families. Take a look at Central Middle School's plan. So the lesson learned was clarity precedes competence. Now the staff can dig deeper in the real work using the clearly communicated model without confusion. This can be powerful for families and students to engage when they know what they are doing, the purpose, and don't get turned off or confused by the terms being used. Central Middle School leaders plan family events for sharing information and details about the upcoming spring plan for learning. So take a look at their family workshop series flyer. As Brene Brown says, clear is kind. And by communicating exactly what it, meaning the learning, is, only reduces the potential for confusion, frustration, and disengagement. Next, we must create conditions for more human connections. So some of the work we've seen with increasing more human connections really relies on, no matter what percentage of your students are in person or remote, frequent high impact interactions are essential to attendance, engagement, and participation rates. Rituals for connection can include events like virtual assemblies and morning meetings in classrooms or teams. The more systematic and reliable these are, the higher engagement and attendance rates we have seen. Students feel like they are part of something. They have FOMO and can engage in habits of connections, increasing their motivation to engage in the learning, which is the most important. Hybrid environments with live synchronous sessions allow for a more authentic human connection. Students can see their teachers and their peers and feel a part of the learning activities. Also, one spotlight practice we've seen is to pair up in-person students with remote students to build community and connection. These students are partners with content and SEL work. This deliberate practice eliminates potential divisions between the two groups of students. Our last practice to increase more human connections is during remote asynchronous, where videos are recorded and shared. What is working is when the teacher's face is shown in the video. The learning is clear, it's guided, and provides a human connection for students. There is more of a personal connection when you can see the teacher. For example, we'd probably not watch the news if we never saw the newscasters. We all have our own favorite news anchors, and it's not because they are recorded over slides and images. It's because we see them when they communicate the news. We build trust with them because of their demeanor, their tone, and their approach. This is the same for students and their teachers. Another great practice we've observed is using video submissions for students to submit work as well, allowing students to show their face and hear their voice for assignment and project completion. What better way to assess learning than viewing a video of them explaining something to their teacher? So many things have changed and will be forever changed based off of the last 10 months. But we've known for a long time that we must be more strategic about curriculum. The pandemic changes can be a catalyst for this long overdue change. Before, the lift for educators was significant with our curriculum and instruction we design and facilitate with our students to interact with it. And now we have increased anxiety and life changes for our schools. We have an army of teachers learning new skills. They're also having to do this with less scheduled time to teach the content. I had an elementary principal illustrate this challenge clearly to me the other day. She said, we used to have 1.5 to 2 hours to teach math every day. Now We only have a 15-minute block for a lesson and a 15-minute time for activity, and we still have to teach the same number of standards. Teachers are also using instructional time to teach students how to communicate and interact successfully in their new shared virtual environments and how to use the tools. Adding to this list is the COVID slide. We know we are facing significantly more learning loss due to the disruption caused by COVID, but teachers are being asked to teach the same amount of standards as if this was a normal year. We know we can do this. In April and May, many districts were quick to narrow their curriculum focus and told teachers only teach these things for the remainder of the year. Because the reality is, we don't have time to teach everything. Everything else about teaching has changed, so why hasn't the curriculum been adjusted? And we are still operating under the assumption that they have to teach everything, all of their content standards. This is not even realistic during a regular school year. Marzano said to cut 2/3 of existing standards 20 years ago. So what about this year? Most teachers don't feel empowered to do this out of lack of fear or a lack of a process. So they stick to the plan of teaching everything, which leads to overwhelmed teachers and, more importantly, a lack of mastery for our students. We are teaching very wide with no hope of going deep. As leaders, how can we support this strategic narrowing of the curriculum content? We must give permission to teachers, but we also must provide a system for narrowing the content focus. Here's an example of how this could look. So we're going to walk through a process supported by this funnel or guiding document. The phases begin with looking at the campus curriculum system for each unit. So teachers analyze and study the standards outlined in the unit. Next, state, district, and campus resources are analyzed to determine which standards are categorized as readiness, supporting, or process standards. Teachers and instructional leaders collaborate to do these next two steps kind of hand in hand, where they further study and consider which standards are critical to the understanding of the entire course and which are most aligned to college, career, and real-world readiness. Then teachers use the narrowed set of standards to pre-assess students. They only pre-assess what's in the red and green area of this funnel. Then they use these results, the standards that end up in the yellow, to design instruction for the unit. So now that I've walked through the process, let's take it through an example. This is an elementary school that was looking at their Unit 3 for 4th grade math. This unit has 6 standards that were deeply analyzed by the teachers and leaders. They engaged knowing they only had 8 days of instruction for this unit, and they kept in mind all the other challenges that are happening currently. They narrowed this set of 6 standards down to 2 standards by only focusing on the readiness standards. Next, they discussed if there was a way to narrow the focus even further and found that one standard was more aligned with real-world college and career readiness than the other, but the other complemented mastery of the priority standard. In other words, they worked together as a powerful pair. So they pre-assessed their students on those 2 standards, and they realized that 4.5A was the standard that was the most reasonable choice to build their instructional design and plan around. And only a small percentage of students actually needed further support with 4.4H. So now they have a plan for teaching one standard really deep over the 8 days that they have scheduled for teaching this unit. So let's look at an example of a planning calendar for this example school. So this is the process we just reviewed. So I'm just going to give you a second to look at the calendar on the slide. So teachers would have started this work of the funnel the week prior, allowing the teacher time to pre-assess the students on Monday, October 5th. The results in the yellow section or the bottom of the funnel on the previous slide would be used to design instruction to start the week on Monday, October 12th. The cycle continues, as you can see in the middle of this unit. The teacher will pre-assess for the next unit on Friday, October 16th. This design and structure allows for this teacher to focus on one standard during this 8-day unit. The original plan was 6 standards in 8 days. No way that would happen in our current reality of less time and more complexity to a COVID reality. We want to make sure teachers can ensure mastery for all students on the most critical content rather than trying to teach everything at surface level with no little chance of ever getting to mastery. Another thing that is stressing out teachers unnecessarily is there are so many ways to teach. Teachers feel they cannot get good at anything because there is a lack of focus and they are being stretched way too thin. This is challenging for leaders as well, trying to support too many strategies. Why would we limit strategies and how much? 3 to 5 things, that's it. Are we sure that so few things is the way to go? Yes, absolutely sure. The schools we are seeing moving the needle are the schools who have narrowed their focus, and they've clearly communicated that focus and have supported teachers with being successful at implementation. Narrowed student-centered set of instructional strategy is part of TEA's Effective Schools framework. Consider this language directly from the ESF. 3 to 5 instructional strategies introduced, modeled, and practiced with consistency and fidelity in all classrooms. That's why campuses we support have created what we call a campus instructional playbook, a focused set of instructional strategies, detailed, specific, communicated, and supported to ensure fidelity of implementation across all classrooms. This narrow focus strategies, supported with professional development and observations with feedback, provides teachers with a clear focus for their work, and they know exactly what they're supposed to get good at and have the ability to get good at it. Campus instructional playbooks are a focused set of instructional strategies selected by the campus instructional leaders to meet the specific needs of their students. Schools that are doing the best things are doing fewer things. Let me repeat that. Schools that are doing the best things right now are doing fewer things, not limiting what teachers can do, but focusing on what teachers must do well to support elevating instructional practice of the campus as a whole. In this example, the school chose 4 strategies to focus on. They supported the playbook with professional learning, coaching, and ongoing experiences to get good at implementation. To highlight one of their plays, we'll look at their campus lesson template, which is play number 1 on their playbook. This campus made a commitment to use the same 5-slide structure in every lesson for both remote and in-person learning. It was selected by leaders for the benefit of students, and the whole campus committed to using the slide set to provide a consistent schema of lesson structure. Teachers could spend their time and energy on the content of the lesson without having to redesign each time. Every slide lets them chunk their lesson and the videos to allow for more engagement by students, because each video or each slide ends with the students to do something and demonstrate engagement and mastery. The instructional leaders designed it, provided professional learning and modeling, and everyone on campus put it into practice. So there are no moving targets. This is what they do, and they get better and better at this practice. So that's it. The best of teaching and learning this fall. Provide clarity of language. Create more human and authentic connections. Limit the content standards and focus on 3 to 5 instructional strategies. That's it. So in closing, let's take another poll. Which of these best of ideas resonated with you the most? So Letty, will you send out the poll? Thank you for participating, and overwhelmingly, limit the content was one of the best of ideas that resonated with the majority of you. And that's great, because We have heard teachers overwhelmingly that they are stressed and they don't feel like they're being successful. So why not help them really narrow down what is it we want the students to learn and how can we get it taught rather than trying to teach everything in this year we're currently living in. So leading forward, the time to do this work is now. We can't keep pushing off improvement work, hoping that COVID is going to die down, because it's been pretty obvious that we're living with this for a while, but students are also in school learning now and need to have the best and most effective instruction. But remember to focus on a few things and do them well. Don't try to take on everything. We are here to support. Don't hesitate to reach out to us about partnering with us to help you navigate these times. We offer many options of services and supports wherever you're at in the journey for success for every kid. We have another webinar opportunity from our Road to Recovery series, which will be December 1st at 4 to 5. We'll have 3 school leaders from Central Texas sharing their work this fall to improve attendance, school culture, and effective instruction. The registration is hyperlinked in the slides, but we also added it to the chat. We would love for you to be able to attend and share it out with colleagues in your district or in other districts. Thanks again for attending. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at our email, solutions@e3alliance.org, with questions or support. We are here to help. We also have many resources